You're listening to Over the Oxer podcast with Tracy Cole for all things to do with the mind for equestrians.
So a really special podcast this week because we've got not just one guest, but three guests, three super duper mindset coaches who all bring to the table lots and lots of experience and knowledge. They're also riding coaches as well in their own right. So I hope we have such a great discussion about riding, equestrianism and mindset. So I'm going to get them to introduce themselves first of all. So Sam, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, good morning, Tracy. It's lovely to be invited onto your podcast. So thank you firstly for that. So yes, I am based in Somerset and predominantly I'm a dressage coach and have sort of come into the mindset work, doing my NLP with you, which was fascinating, and then my Master Prac as well, which I really enjoyed. So yeah, I would say I'm a horse-centered coach. And I like to think about how the rider approaches their horses from their mindset, the stories that they're building around their horses and their relationships. So, yeah, I think anybody who trains with me, we go on quite a deep dive into self-awareness and what that brings to the relationship with the horse. So, yeah, I've had lots of different experiences. I've ridden to quite a high level myself. I've trained to quite a high level. I've got a daughter who rode to quite a high level. And I also work with parents as well. So I sort of, my strap line for my business is think well, ride well, perform well. And I think it's a cyclical sort of thing that keeps turning. So yeah, that's me.
A multi-pronged attack on equestrianism.
I think it's sort of just kind of organically grown that way. So it's been a lot of learning, and I think I'm still learning. So yeah,
definitely, aren't we all? Sarah, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Yep. So I'm Sarah Gowling. I am based in Northamptonshire. My husband runs an arable and beef farm, so sometimes I'm on the farm, and then majority of the time I'm coaching. Been very lucky to be established at Brampton Stables for about 25 years of my career, where I trained and then was then lucky enough to work with the GB team for 7 years. So I've had a good amount of experience with the international groom circuit as well. So currently I am a BHS-qualified coach, accredited Centre 10 coach. I've also been working with you, Tracy, for the last 2 years and loved every minute of it with our gang that we've got here today. So I did the NLP Practitioner course with you, and then I'm just coming towards the end of my Master Prac and timeline and hypnosis, which has been fascinating. I'm able to then practice now what I preach, so I can work with clients both on the horse and off the horse, either face-to-face or Zoom. And then in between times, I'm also an accredited pony club coach. So in between that, I then work with young riders, and I can work from grassroots up to competitive-minded riders.
Wow, you keep busy.
Yes, best way.
There's not much time for breathing, but that sounds good. That sounds super. Jo, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Jo. I have Surrey Hills NLP, business that I've started just recently, really in the last sort of year, because having worked with horses all my life and a BHS coach, I think a lot of problems that people have with their riding is probably in their mindset. And I also think, having done a lot of work with thoroughbreds, it's the horse's mindset that the rider needs to get round as well. And I think there's middle ground for actually working together, because they're all different, as are we. So I've found it a really fascinating journey, and it's taught me a lot about myself and my animals, as well as my clients. So that's me.
And you work with the racehorses as well, don't you? The ex-racehorses,
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is a tough job.
It is at times a tough job, and I love thoroughbreds. They are just the kindest horses, I think, in a lot of ways, but they are misunderstood. And the mindset of the rider and the handler, I think, is so important with them.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So welcome all. As I said before we started recording, the gang's back. So you all did your master prac together, and we had so many fabulous conversations that I thought it'd be really nice to do an episode with the three of you, getting a few views and a few hints and tips and tricks from you. So my first question, I'm going to start off with Sam, but please jump in, everybody else. What would you say is a mindset myth that some riders believe and it might be holding them back?
I think the whole topic around fear for me is quite a big issue that a lot of riders face. And it doesn't matter whether you're an amateur or you're a professional, the feeling of fear comes from all different avenues, from all different angles. And I really love the way that Dr. Pippa Grange and her research about it's not about becoming fearless, it's understanding that you can fear less when you understand where your fear is coming from. And I think for me, it coming to that understanding gives you some real psychological freedom. It's not about taking it away, it's about understanding it. And when you come to a place of awareness and understanding, then you can address it and take it forward in a more positive way, because we all need that in the moment fear. That survival in us, it stops us running out into the road in front of a car. It's an important it's an important strategy that we have in our biology, and it mustn't we mustn't try and eradicate it. That's not the fear that we need to eradicate. So I look at the fear of not being enough, and a lot of riders, it doesn't matter whether you're professional or you're amateur, you have that, what if I look incompetent? What if I let people down? What if I'm not good enough? How are they judging me? And I think that really detracts from the relationship you have with your horse, because your horse is experiencing all the things that you're telling yourself. They don't have the same moral framework that we have as humans. So, they're just responding to our physiological responses to what's going on in the internal chatter in our heads. So I think, the wording around fear just needs slightly broadening so people understand, which fear are we dealing with? Yeah. Would be my answer to that question. Yeah. Something that comes up a lot in the work that I do, and it really doesn't matter whether it's grassroots riders or it's professional riders. There is fear everywhere, and we all experience it. We're all human at the end of the day. So
yeah. And I suppose it's that appropriate versus inappropriate level. But like you say, the some parts of fear are quite useful. We don't want to be walking into the road or jumping off cliffs or And I suppose as well, Sarah or Joe, there will be people that if you could get rid of all their fear, then it could be quite challenging. They might be overhorsed, or it could be quite a disadvantage to lose all the fear. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I think that's very true, actually. And I do think that is sometimes a problem, that people are overhorsed and they are very fond of that horse. They become very attached to it, but sometimes it's just not right for you. The other thing I would say about fear as well is that certainly when I learnt to ride, you never get off your horse. You ride this one way and it has to do what you want it to do.
Yeah.
Well, certainly with the thoroughbreds, because they can get themselves so wound up. If they're getting themselves in a panic and you get them off and you lead them past something and you get back on, I don't see why people put a shame in that.
Yeah.
You just have to get around that situation at that time with nobody getting hurt. And then slowly that confidence builds with horse and rider. So next time you probably won't have to get off. But you haven't frightened yourself, you haven't frightened your horse, you get home safe. And I do think there's a bit of a myth about having to be brave past things or having to push a horse. But Rome wasn't built in a day. You've got time. Just take your time and build your confidence. I think that's really important.
Yeah, definitely. I think when I learned to ride, definitely it was you never get off. Never. Doesn't matter the circumstance, you never get off. And it's so ridiculous when you actually stand back and think about it, isn't it? You know, what do you think here, Sarah?
Just moving on from what Sam and Joe said, that I think I'm not on all of the social media platforms. However, what I have noticed in the past 12 months are quite influential people starting to put out videos that they perhaps wouldn't put out 4 or 5 years ago of their struggles, and talking about the myths of you should never get off or have to keep on going and keep on plugging, and it may be the detriment of either you or your horse. Actually seeing the people in the spotlight going through a struggle, or having a horse having a refusal, or having the horse having a bit of a mental challenge with a particular movement, and watching them slowly but surely starting to regain the confidence, like both of the ladies were saying, with the horse rider combination. I think that is playing a really positive role in trying to sort of erase some of the myths of you never give up. Because old school is thankfully slowly starting to be removed as well. There's some really good quality old school methods. Equally, there are also some methods that are very detrimental to both horse and rider, and thankfully they're becoming less and less seen. And the posts that people are putting out where they do have a struggle and you can work through it, it means that the grassroots rider, the person that is not having sponsorship left, right and centre, that means that they can cope with their struggles too, along with people being able to talk about their assistance with mindset coaches as well, coming up to big events. We're noticing that happening more and more in the equestrian world. It's already happening in lots of other different elite sports where you're having a coach that goes with you to support you and to give you strategies. And now we're seeing a lot of the, mainly actually, to be fair, from what I've seen, the event riders coming out and talking about their areas of expertise and the people that are in their support networks to be able to keep them to the standard they're at, both physically and also within their mindset. So I think a lot of myths have been removed from people being a little bit more honest that are in the limelight, which I think is good.
Yeah, definitely. It's becoming quite commonplace, that, isn't it? That people talk about the nerves, even if it's the nerves of excitement. It's not necessarily the detrimental nerves, but people are talking about this and also talking about their mindset. How people are questioning them, I think, as well. You know, how do you build that mindset when you're about to go, I don't know, through the cross country or something? Yeah, so it is slowly, like you say, starting to change. Sorry, Sam, I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
I can't remember now. I think it was something that Joe said about, you know, as riders, we want to have a conversation with our horses. We don't need to dominate them. And I think, you know, it's like any relationship, isn't it? You can't dominate a relationship with a human being. That's called coercive. Whereas we used to be able to say, oh, we must take control and we must ride through it. And actually, when you look at brilliant horse people like Warwick Schiller and Tristan Tucker, it's helping the horse understand the right choices to make and how to bring their bodies into a sense of it's okay.
Yeah.
Life is okay. And I think it's people like that within the industry that we need to look more towards, especially as competitive riders. You know, we don't want the horse running on a flight pattern. because then they're always internalizing stress, and that doesn't make for a soft, supple horse. And, from a dressage point of view, it's so refreshing. I went to France to last year's Europeans at Crozet, and just the standard of riding is softer. It's not so, up and running, knees up. And that to me was never dressage. It was always, kind of circus training. And now there's a really softer approach. It's just so much more harmonious. And I think hopefully in the next 10 years, if equestrian sport continues, we can say, we were there for the change, and the change is good. And, I think it's really important that we start with the children, a little bit like Andrew McLean has done in Australia through the Pony Club. We help kids to understand it's not about what the horses do for us. It's about how we do it together. And I think for me, as a coach of young riders, middle-aged riders, older riders, I always bring this back to them. What would you like? What does the horse need? Because when you approach the horse in that way, I think you get a better understanding and you get a much clearer conversation with each other. But that takes quite a lot of awareness, because when you're in flight yourself or you're fearful of something, you will react in a slightly detrimental way. That's human biology. We can't change that unless you suddenly go, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Rein it in.
Yeah.
So, and I like Joe. I love the thoroughbreds. I think they're super clever horses, and they do get bad reputation. But the ones that I help, super clever, super clever horses.
They are clever horses, and they are misunderstood. And I think one thing that I've learned is that just because they're talented doesn't mean they make good racehorses. They have to have the temperament. And some of them do love it. They do. But some of them just get quite wired from it. And to try and turn them around and move them on to another job is not easy. But you have to have the right mindset to be able to cope with them, because a lot of the time they just need one and confidence, and they just run with a pack all the time. They're always in a herd when they're running, when they go on the gallops, what have you. So it just takes a lot of time. And I think the re-education of racehorses and people having racehorses and their mindset has improved massively in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
The one thing you mentioned earlier, Joe, was that some of the old-fashioned ways. And when I go back to having kids as a child, we gave them so much more time. There weren't endless competitions, so we didn't have that sort of added, temptation. But, I always remember as a child being told to take my time, to be patient with them. So I think somewhere midway through my riding experience, that's when it all became a bit more pressured and a bit more, we've got to have 7-year-olds at Grand Prix or whatever it is. It used to be a badge of honour. How quickly and how young could you get a horse to Grand Prix? And, actually, I'd rather ride my horses at Grand Prix at 15, 16 than that to be the end of their career. So, I think we do have to take a long, hard look at that, and maybe we can mould some of the good bits of old-fashioned equestrianism with this new, more researched, horse-centered approach. I think, if we could do that, it would be wonderful, wouldn't it? But I guess we've all got our own responsibility, and we all need to do the best we do when we're coaching for the horse in front of us.
Absolutely.
With that as well, Sam, there's something that triggered off from what both you and Joe were saying, is that a lot of the time when I'm coaching riders, the number one thing I ask them to do is to give the horse time. Now, it could be a couple of moments, it could be a minute, but we are constantly in two-way conversation with our horse, working as everybody is agreeing in a partnership. So the number one thing I'm repeating all the time is you're asking them a question. If you ask a fellow human a question, you give them time to reflect on that and then reply to you.
Mm.
A
I love
lot of us do not give our horse enough time to reply to our question. We just pile on question after question, and then we expect the horse to be able to filter out all of that and then answer all of the questions all at the same time. So I just say to my clients, you're asking a question. Every time you ask a question, it has a question mark at the end. That means you expect an answer. So wait for that answer to happen. And it just seems to resonate with a lot of my clients that then I'm not humanizing the horse, but it's just giving the rider their own permission to slow down, think through, and allow the horse to work alongside them and with them.
No, I love that.
Yeah, I like that too. And were you going to say something there, Joe?
Yeah, I was just going to say the whole humanising thing, I think, is actually something quite interesting as well, because I think at times people get frustrated with their horses because they humanise them. And I think you've got to find that middle ground where they, as Sam said, their moral thinking is not the same as ours, and we have to treat them as the animals that they are, and they can only answer questions in certain ways. And I think that's a really good point about humanizing them. I think it is a mistake that people make. I don't think they are naughty, and they don't pre-plan any sort of behaviour. It's just...
You mean, Joe, they don't go to bed and read the Book of Resistance?
No, they don't. Apparently not.
What can I do to annoy her today?
That's the biggest one I get, yeah.
I'm not sure about ponies. I'm not sure if ponies can.
Brilliant. So, thinking about what you've been saying about the horse rider partnership rather than the leader and the follower kind of thing, then lots of people, and we have touched on it already, but lots of people will say to me now, my horse picks up on my nerves. So they're coming to me, very responsibly and saying, so I need to not be so nervous when there's actually no need to be nervous, because I'm transmitting that to my horses. So can you just tell us a little bit about your views on that? What can people do if they feel that the horse is going to pick up on it? Whether the horse responds depends on the horse's personality. But what do you think is happening there, and maybe what riders could do in that kind of situation? Shall we go back to Sam?
I think horses are very reactive to energy and our physiological state. So, there's lots of research into this, and I try, when people come for lessons, I think I'm quite good at reading how somebody is feeling within themselves, whether it's they've gone a little bit grey, or I can see the heart racing out the front of the jacket, or, they're a bit uncertain, and, they're trying to be too quick at something. There's always little giveaways when people do that. And I just encourage people just to allow the horse to walk around the arena, and for them to let that energy out of their bodies. Because when you start saying to somebody, or you try to avoid the situation, you don't allow that energy to go anywhere. So by them walking the horse around the arena, it gives them a sense of control. I'm not asking them to get on a horse when they're very agitated or in a very heightened state of arousal, because I have to look at the horse and what's the horse experiencing through this? Because it's come to a new environment. It too is a little bit out of sorts in itself. So how do we bring that into a slightly calmer starting framework? And I think, the horses, they definitely react to people. And I always say to people, don't ride your horses like you lead your lives. They don't understand the complexities of your time shortage. They're just going to react because you're busy and you're bustling them, as opposed to saying, okay, I actually only have got 20 minutes. So maybe I'll just sit in the stable and, give you a nice groom, and it helps me relax, then the horses relax. So, yeah, I think they pick up on our energy very, very quickly horses. And
Yeah.
I think there's that energy connection that they have to us. And I don't think that's humanizing. I think, there's too much research into that sort of study and horse behavior, really.
Mm. And when you say, the person who is a little bit buzzy in their head or a bit nervous, and you get them to walk around, is that they lead their horse around? Or do
Yeah,
you,
I like them to lead them around,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I'll walk with them. We start talking about other things. It helps everybody just, I've got a few other techniques. Some of them will be breathing, but a lot of people, again, if they're in that heightened energy state, you've got to come to them slightly differently, and not everybody can do a breathing exercise because there's too much other stuff pulling them away. So
yeah.
sometimes distracting them and asking them what they're having for supper can be quite a good.
I
Unless
like
they go,
it.
"Oh, I've forgotten to buy the milk," and then adds another layer of stress to their
Yeah.
already heightened state. But, no.
Sarah, what do you think about this transmission of the emotions of the human to the horse, and what we can do to help the horses?
I definitely echo what Sam was talking about, mainly about time. We're also caught up with time, that we start to worry that we don't have enough. So then, of course, we rush, exactly how Sam was just describing it. What I tend to find is, if I have a rider that I go to see or they come to see me, I do tend to ask them a fairly open-ended question of how their day's been, how their week has been running, because I find that a lot of the built-up tension or the nerves could potentially be coming from external sources rather than anything to do with the horse. If it is directly to do with the horse, I then normally find that it's history, as in the last time I was here, or 2 years ago, or 5
Yeah.
years ago, and all the memories flood back. And actually, your sweet little horse is walking around quite happily, but you have gone back into the past, and you are looking almost for a reason to why you are feeling like this. And so, of course, we're picking up on all the emotions. So I do techniques as Sam's doing. I think talking about how their day has gone definitely helps. And a lot of the time I do address the situation by saying, notice your horse, be present. Let's remove ourselves from what has happened, and the what ifs are huge.
Yeah.
We can't really do a what if exercise necessarily on the horse through the NLP work. However, I do find that I use now a lot of the Hakalal. So I use a lot of going from your focal vision to your peripheral vision. That is a huge, huge improvement. Even if even the client I'm working with has never done or heard of NLP, I'll give them a brief description of what I'm going to ask them to do. It's so new that even if they are in a slightly heightened level of anxiety or stress, they can still easily raise their vision above their normal eye line. And I then just make them aware that actually positive feedback is coming through rather than negative. I think we have this feeling of excitement, nerves. We have this feeling in our tummy. It can be anywhere in our bodies, can't it? But whatever that feeling is, of cartwheels or butterflies, dependent on the situation we're in, we then make a decision on how we should feel. So
Yeah.
rather than going, actually, these butterflies are exactly the same as when I'm excited or apprehensive, and exactly the same as if I'm a little bit nervous. But all I've done is I've then just stuck a label on what I think I should be feeling right now, and encouraging people to be a little bit more informed of how their bodies are feeling and how we can use our vision and our thought process to diffuse this will then, of course, then help the horse. And equally, like we all know, a lot of the time, the horse will just carry on being their normal sweet horse, and then the rider will realize that actually, yeah, unfortunately it was in my mindset. But again, that's what we're here for, isn't it? To be able to, like Sam was saying, and Joe, we need to read the situation that we're in,
Yeah.
both horse and rider. But that's what our job is, and that's why we love doing what we're doing, because it's harder than people realize. And that's why I got into working with Centre 10 and working with you, Tracy, because I wanted to understand the mind, the unconscious mind mainly, but also I wanted to be able to give an informed information to my clients of when they're struggling, because we always need a little bit of guidance, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, Sarah, from what the one thing that I took away from our NLP training was creating rapport with people and understanding how they learn. So whether they're auditory, visual, kinesthetic, what sense do they pick up the biggest amount of learning in? Because I can't say to a client, can you feel it, if they're not a kinesthetic learner?
Absolutely.
I have to say, did you hear the horse breathing differently? Did you see anything different? Were you able to look above your eye line a little bit? And I think, understanding the person that's in front of you and helping them on their level, how they can take that learning, I think is like you say, one of the greatest things that I learned from the NLP. And, I know we touched about a little bit on Centre 10, but, just understanding how people learn and in which sense do they pick up the most amount of information, I think helps their relationship with their horses hugely, because they're not trying to always feel it, and I think that can be a bit of a barrier to some people if they're not a very kinesthetic learner. So yeah, I think I agree with everything that you've said, and it's just understanding the client in front of you, isn't it? And
Yes,
and how best to help them and the horse.
Yeah, and just for you asking the question, as simple as, how do you learn the best? How is this relationship going to go forward? And having the knowledge that we've all got now gives us permission to ask that question, but we can then go so much deeper.
Yeah.
We don't have to tell our riders what we're doing, but it means that we've got a better overall view of how the rider is perceiving what we're asking of them.
Definitely.
Yeah. Joe, what would you say, thinking about riders and their horses and this partnership, especially because you work with so many reactive horses, highly strung horses, some riders say to me that they would be calm if they had a nice, calm horse. They had a horse who'd seen it all, been there, done it. But they've gone ahead and bought a horse that is highly reactive, highly sensitive. And because they see or they feel the horse is nervous, then that makes them nervous. Is there anything that they can be thinking differently, reframing, or any little technique that they could be thinking of?
I do think one of the big things is the time, and spending time with your horse on the ground. That really helps with the thoroughbreds. And I actually personally, Sarah just mentioned Hakalau, it helped me enormously with the thoroughbreds, because you do have that moment where you broaden your focus and your body just relaxes, almost involuntary, and I can feel the horse just relax underneath me. And I now use that quite a lot in my training, and I found it massively helpful. I think it's probably the thing for a quick sort of minute thing that you can do. It's probably one of the strongest techniques that's actually helped riders, because it helps the horses so much directly, I think. But I think the reframe, you've got to just get in the mind of the reactive horse a little bit and take your time, look into varying different things. I must say, I think a lot of people overfeed their horses as well. So you need to get all the advice, and when you're in that situation of all the boxes are ticked, the horse is happy physically, then you need to reframe the way you think if it's still not working, and just go back and look at where things go wrong, look at what's upset the horse. Just give yourself time and the horse time.
And then they need to contact you, Joe, for some more training.
Absolutely. Everyone does Zoom calls now, so I'm sure you could do a Zoom lesson as well. I will just say, you mentioned Hakalau and the peripheral vision technique. I've got an episode on the podcast, so I'll put that into the description box so people can be reminded of it and use it while it's, it's working so well for different riders. So I suppose to kind of round off, I'm going to ask you a question about a particular rider that you have worked with, maybe a heartwarming story, a turnaround story, a breakthrough story of someone who has just done a complete 180, either in their mindset or in their riding, just so we can get a flavour of the type of clients and the work that you do. So I'll start with Sam again.
I have quite a few clients over the last 6 months that have done a real turnaround in their self-belief. And I think I do a lot of work with young riders. So I always like them to, in their world, it's all about Instagram and Amazon, an instant gratification where it's all just presented in a pristine way.
Yeah.
And I think when I say to young riders, tell me who your riding idol is, go and research them and go and tell me, or come back and tell me all the ups and downs they've had in their career. Because let me tell you, equestrianism, getting and being successful isn't linear. There's a lot of up and down in there. And I think when they start to research how these top riders have made it to their place, I mean, some of them have a lot of funding behind them, but there are also a lot of riders that don't. And it's those riders I try and encourage them to go and research and look at. And I think, when you understand the journey and what you would like out of your journey, then I think your mindset is then more open to change and the possibility. Actually, you can do whatever you set yourself the target to, providing you're prepared to put the work in. And that doesn't mean just the physical work, that means the mental work as well. And, I think a lot of amateurs don't realise that they too can do all the mental work that the professional riders do, because they're, like I said right at the beginning, they all have the same issues. We all have the same issues. Doesn't matter what level we ride at or compete at or train at or hack at. We all have the same, fears and worries. So, I think one of the kids that I help the most at the moment, she came to me. She's got jumping ponies, and she didn't want to jump 70 centimeters when she first started training, and she's got really into the growth of it all and not just the competing side of it. I think that for me is been one of the most lovely things to do, because it's taken her out of outcome and into process. And if you're going to have a long sustained career in horses, you've got to love the process. You've really got to love the process, and the outcome is the kind of cherry bit at the top, but you've got to love the process. That for me is would be her. I can't name her because I haven't asked her permission.
No.
I would say that's given me the greatest satisfaction.
Oh, fantastic. Sarah, have you got a story for us about a particular rider or set of riders?
Yep. So the main one that stands out is one of my long-standing clients. I started working with her and her young horse when he was 4. He's now 21.
Oh, wow.
So she was my one of the 2 first clients I ever had, as I decided to go into freelance when I was working part-time at Brampton Stables. And I've known her for a long time. I've known the horse for a long time. And last year, when she knew I was working with you and getting this as a qualification with the NLP, I asked if I could use her as a guinea pig for my hypnosis work.
Yeah.
So I went over a couple of times to her house, and we then I set up a script for her hypnosis, and we basically focused on her hacking. She has always been hacking and has reasonably enjoyed it, but not really loved the hacking particular area where, again, in the past, history comes back and bites you on the bottom, and a dog jumped out and scared her horse. He is always a good boy, but of course, they're a flight animal, so he was slightly reactive. So that was always sort of a little bit of a demon sitting on her shoulder every time she walked out the yard. So we worked within the hypnosis with that, and just absolutely delighted that she's now hacking out. She's going back out either on her own or with groups of riders at her yard. She's also really loving going out to some sponsored rides, some charity events as well. And yeah, it's just lovely to see the smile on her face. And she sent me a picture not so long ago that actually I put on my social media page. And it's just, I mean, it's a beautiful picture, but it's just her face.
Yeah.
She's just smiling, and that's what did it for me. And I was just really delighted that I could help her. So that was brilliant.
Oh, that's really nice, because it doesn't have to be that someone is working at an elite level, does it? It's just that turnaround, and the enjoyment comes back, which is kind of why we do it, hopefully.
It's got to be fun.
Yeah, well, you hope so. Jo, have you got anyone that you've turned around?
Mine's slightly different actually, but it's a very important to me. So years ago I stopped teaching my daughter because I know nothing. As is quite common. And long story short, I had a weanling 11 years ago come to me from the sales that was going to be a racehorse, and he stayed with me, went off into training, came back on all his holidays, and never actually raced because the last couple of times he came back from training, he was so thin. It just didn't suit him. All the horses came back looking wonderful, but he didn't. It was just it didn't work in his brain at all. And he was going to go to Ascot Sales. COVID hit, they were cancelled. We ended up buying him for not a lot of money. My daughter actually bought him. And it's been a huge battle with him. And I have been there every step of the way with her. And we sort of turned him around, but he's still pretty neurotic. He's quite an extreme case of being a neurotic horse. And he can be quite naughty with his teeth and his back legs. And then this summer he got a WPI, and I kind of just put a bit of fly cream in it. And then he got a really, really sore eye. Ended up having to go to the vets. You can't even get an injection in him. He's horrendous with vets. And he ended up having to go to the vets. And after a week, they said that I think the only way is to take the eye out. And my daughter was in Italy on holiday. And I spoke to her. She said, "You make the decision," which I did. I and ahed because I really didn't know if it was fair on a horse that was that neurotic to take his eye out. I did. And she was absolutely devastated because she adored him. Thought she's never going to ride him again. And the last 4 months I've worked with the pair of them, and he's just started doing some pole work again. She's back riding him. And that was building the mindset really slowly. Just saying, we've still got him. Maybe he's going to live in the field, but we've still got him. And then just try sitting on him. And then I've got a very kind horse that he's went out hacking with. So that horse was his left eye. And they are now going great guns. And I think because of the trust, they're working together a bit more. And his flat work is better than ever. And it's just so heartwarming. And she was so devastated, so ready to give up.
Yeah.
And I think between the three of us, we've really worked on his mindset and her mindset. And it's it's quite for me, it's such a heartwarming story.
Absolutely.
Apart from the fact he's got whiskers growing out of where he had an eye, which really alarms me. Other than that, and it makes you realise, for all his anger and aggression, at times in his life, he did trust us.
Yeah.
He trusted very few people. And just that whole process has been, it's been like her getting to badminton almost. It's been such a heartwarming process to see them now back pretty much where they were. Whether he'll actually jump again, it doesn't matter. He's part of the family. But that sort of devastation, she was inconsolable. And between the three of us, we've turned the situation around, which is really
wonderful.
Yeah. That's a fabulous story. I love it. Well, I could talk to you three all day, and I really hope that you come back, but I know that we're all busy and we've got to get on with our lives. So just to round off, can you give us an idea, where can we find you on socials or on the internet? I'll pop the details into the description box so that if anyone does want some advice or mindset sessions or even riding lessons, they can contact you. So Sam, where can we find you on socials and the internet?
So my website is www.osborndressage.com, and that's the same for my social media as well. And anybody, any level, if you're in Somerset, I travel around as well. So you're always welcome, and your horses. So
Lovely. Thank you. Sarah, how can we find you?
Just on Facebook under Sarah Gowling Coaching.
Lovely. Great stuff. And Joe, where are you?
Surrey Hills NLP.co.uk, or the same on social media as well.
Lovely. Well, I hope people do contact you all, because you are brilliant as coaches, both mindset, the physicality of riding. Thank you so much for your time today. That has been wonderful. Thank you.
It's lovely getting back together again.
It really is.
Yeah, lovely.
Thank you, girls. I really enjoyed that.